This is chapter 20. Chapter 20 deals with mass communications. For the most part, we're going to deal with chapter 20 in terms of the fourth P and the four Ps, which is promotion. We've already talked about communications, marketing communications in chapter 19. So we're going to focus primarily on advertising as one of the communication tools in terms of mass media. So we'll discuss how to develop advertising objectives, considering the 5 M's of ad planning. We'll discuss how marketers should choose advertising media and vehicles, how to make major ad program or communication program decisions, and discuss some budget considerations. Consider for a second these images you see down here. If you look at them individually and pretend the others weren't around, these are actually print ads that were used by TikTok recently in their new ad campaign. These new TikTok print ads corresponded to new flavors that TikTok was promoting. And you have to wonder, how could they get away with just such a simple little logo and image? This one's actually supposed to be a mango. That might be the only one that was a little bit confusing. And you might think to yourself that the reason why these could be effective is because people are already very familiar with TikTok and the types of products that TikTok sells. I wanted to give you an example of a really good integrated marketing communications plan or campaign, sorry. So this was an integrated mass media campaign that was initiated beginning with the Vancouver Olympics back in, I think, 2002, where they started this Thank You Mom campaign. And you can see all the different types of mass media, including digital commercials, including they actually had some digital retargeting, they had sponsorship, they had some e-commerce components, social media components to this, and they also continued this throughout some of their retail touch points and traditional ad campaigns. And according to P&G, the challenge was, although they knew that people were familiar with P&G, their household and personal care brands, they really weren't as familiar with Procter & Gamble as the parent company. Now, in the last decade or so, people have become much more familiar, and that's partly due to this campaign. So the strategy for Procter & Gamble was to turn this Thank You Mom campaign and the connection with the Olympics as a worldwide partner into a holistic business-driving communications plan. So they infused the Thank You Mom idea into the Olympics. They generated brand linkages with all of its participating brands, and they developed what they called an ecosystem that rewarded every interaction. As a result, they believed that they created the most successful campaign in P&G's history by the time it got to the London 2012 Olympic Games. This was something that they'd been continuing for a few different Olympics. They believe that it delivered $200 million increase in incremental sales in the United States. It generated 17 million views on YouTube, and it became the most shared set of videos of the Olympic Games, earning them 33.6 billion media impressions. So that's a pretty extreme example, but it shows the rewards of such a well thought out, well crafted, and implemented media campaign. Just another highlight of those results. The reason that this worked so well for Procter & Gamble is because they take the time, the energy, and the effort to have a really deep understanding of their core customer. With that deep understanding, they were able to realize and craft messages and images that would appeal to women and mothers. They were able to connect to women using the themes and emotions that would be salient and moving to that target demographic. They have a good understanding of the role that products play, and particularly home, health, and beauty products, in everyday life of women and moms. And they persuade mothers and women that Procter & Gamble brands understand them, support them, and are there for them. And that's why this campaign was so successful. And here's an infographic that shows you some of these things. That they realize it's not just what moms do or say, it's who they are. And they tried to reflect some of these themes and a lot of the Thank You Mom pieces and messages. And if you YouTube Thank You Mom, you'll see so many examples of these things. The interesting thing was, although they were trying to appeal to moms in general, kind of as a default, they were able to connect to even a younger demographic. Because even if you're not a mom yourself, everyone or most people have a mom or someone that they associate having that mother role in their life. And the things that they were showing in their commercials and their videos were really salient both to mothers and to people who are children or were children themselves. So they really reached a very, very broad group of customers with this campaign, helping to make it so successful. So again, this reflects a lot of advertising. It's that paid form of one-way mass communication. It reaches a lot of people, and this is one of the benefits that mass media had in carrying out this Thank You Mom message through television and other mass media sources. But advertising must find a way to cut through the clutter. If you remember the communications process model, that macro model where you have the sender and the receiver and everything in between can get affected by noise or clutter. That's why advertisers must come up with kind of innovative, interesting, maybe funny types or methods of communicating or creating messages. So I have that I'll show you, and I also have these in the Blackboard site in case they don't come across so well here. Now within these videos, I want you to keep in mind the 5 M's of ad planning. That is, what are the advertising objectives, okay, the mission? How much money do we have to spend to allocate across the media? What should the ad campaign say? What media should we use? And how can we measure the results? And that's mission, money, message, media, and measurement. So this is an ad from Depend. And this is actually an April Fool style ad, but it's a real ad that was broadcast.
For 3 years now, our company has been #1. And right now, I'm going #2.
Get a free sample at Depend.com.
So think to yourself, what do you believe the advertising objectives were here? In my mind, I think that this being kind of a spoofy ad, it was to cut through the clutter. Let's get people's attention. Let's come up with something that will get people talking. They probably didn't spend a whole lot of money on producing that ad. It was very short. They used the CEO, the real CEO, so they didn't have to have any talent fees. And it was only a one-day campaign because April Fool's ads, they don't stick around long in terms of paying for the broadcast, but they can have a longer life on YouTube and other forms of digital media. Let's look at the next one.
At last, a range of underwear from the one company in the world that knows nuts better than anyone. Knickers by Snickers. Snickers. Made with the softest, velvety, organic-y nylon for the most satisfying hole.
I wouldn't put my nuts in anything else.
And again, that was a real commercial that was aired by Snickers. It was an April Fool's campaign that got a lot of chatter on social media. So it had a lot of earned media impressions. And a lot of times with these April Fool's style ads, it gives brands an opportunity outside of something seasonal or something really related to the product to get attention. So I think Snickers and Depend did a really good job of that. And they were able to evaluate results of these by earned media impressions, but also maybe some uptick in sales. Here's the third one. Now, this campaign was something that had a little longer shelf life. Under Armour, part of their advertising objectives was to reach out to a new demographic and to get people talking. So this was an ad that cost a little bit more in terms of money. They really didn't say a lot about Under Armour, except that I think the message here was that looks can be deceiving. And an important part of this is that this particular campaign, so this was more than just a one-day commercial, they reported that it led to a 1.5 billion media impressions, that it also led to $15 million in earned media. So that's media they didn't actually pay for, but 15 million is the value of what they believe they got out of that in terms of media exposure. An average of 4 minutes spent on the site by consumers or people at the campaign's peak. And importantly, they believe it led to a 42% increase in visits to the UnderArmour.com website and a 28% sales increase for the brand. So that all deals with measurement and what the results of that particular ad message and campaign were. So the 5 things that I've been listing here are shown again here. These are the major ad program decisions. So first, realizing that this must always begin with an understanding of the target market's motive. Advertising can be a very cost-effective way to disseminate messages because of the scope and the scale of how many people it can reach. After identifying the target market and buyer motives, you must make the 5 major decisions incorporated in the 5 M's shown here. That is mission, money, message, media, and measurement. And these are the things that would be evaluated or determined within each of those. The main advertising objectives or goals are specific communications task and achievement level that should be accomplished with a specific audience in a specific period of time. We typically classify advertising objectives according to whether they seek to inform the audience, persuade the audience, remind the audience, or reinforce the audience. And typically, these goals will correspond pretty well to those stages in the hierarchy of effects models, the micro communication models discussed in chapter 19, where we start with cognition and end in behavior. Now, informative or informing advertising, see if I have these in order, aims to create brand awareness and knowledge, typically or sometimes of new products or new features of an existing product. And it may focus on key product benefits that are easy to remember and are identifiable by customers. Reminder advertising aims to stimulate that repeat purchase of products or services. So it's assuming that someone has already been through that cognition to behavior process, and now they need to be reminded again to purchase a second or third or fourth time. So these ads will often be branding based to help strengthen brand loyalty. Now persuasive advertising is used to create liking, preference, and conviction. And that is the one that really focuses on that purchase behavior. Some persuasive advertising is comparative, so it may compare the focal brand to competitors and on aspects they believe are better or superior. And that type of advertising typically works best when it motivates people to think or feel about a certain feature or benefit or attribute when they're processing the ad. And then reinforcement advertising, the last one, aims to convince current purchasers that they made the right choice. You may have studied a topic or a subject matter called cognitive dissonance in a psychology class or a consumer behavior class, and that's when consumers may have buyer's remorse, or they're uncertain if they made the right choice in the list of alternatives. So reinforcement advertising is used to help ensure consumers that they did do the right thing. So these ads may depict satisfied customers or people having fun on vacation at a particular place or enjoying features of a new car, for example. So take a look at this commercial and decide whether you believe the intentions are to inform, persuade, remind, or reinforce.
It's working. If my calculations are correct. There goes another lab coat.
Bill. Need a hand? Persil's new and improved formula delivers 10 dimensions of clean. Looks clean, feels clean, smells clean. And that science guy is 10 dimensions of clean.
Ooh, 10 dimensions? Like parallel dimensions.
Yes. Only cleaner. It's not just clean. It's Persil Pro Clean.
Now again, the question is, did that ad intend to inform, persuade, remind, or reinforce? I'm not sure if you are familiar with Persil, but they're fairly new to the American laundry care category. I think it's actually a German company. This ad was really developed to inform American consumers, because for us, Tide and Gain and those guys are the big players in laundry care. So they had to first show you, right, with all the washing machines and the scientists and the clean shirt, what the product was for, what category they're competing in, and what benefits this product has perhaps over some of its competitors. This is not a commercial, just a print ad. Something a little bit more emotional, but do you believe it's intended to inform, persuade, remind, or reinforce? In my mind, this is an effort to persuade people to adopt a pet from the SPCA rather than maybe going to a breeder. Let's look at this one.
Yeah. La 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 la.
In my opinion, that one is persuasive and maybe also an effort to remind. Don't forget to book your vacation, and also persuading someone to use that particular website in order to book their travel. Now, what about the advertising budget? I've said a couple of times that advertising is quite expensive, and it is treated as an expense in terms of a company's balance sheet. But smart marketers consider advertising an investment in building brand equity and an investment in building customer loyalty. So here's 5 factors to consider when setting an ad budget, which is how much do you plan to spend. One consideration is, what is the stage in the product's life cycle? New products that consumers have never seen before usually need a large ad budget because they're focusing on brand awareness, gaining customer trial, and informing customers that the new product exists and has features or benefits that can meet their needs. On the other hand, then established brands maybe in a maturity phase of the product life cycle, are typically supported by lower ad budgets. They don't need to inform and create brand knowledge. The second consideration is market share and consumer base. Brands that have a high market share already typically will require less advertising expenditure in order to maintain its share of market. Building share by increasing market size, though, will require a larger expenditure. The third thing is competition and clutter. If there's a market with a large number of competitors and high ad spending, like the cola industry or beer industry, a brand really has to advertise more heavily because otherwise they're not going to have a voice. There's so much other noise and competition for attention. Ad frequency is another consideration. How many times do you need to repeat your message in order for the message to be heard or to be understood by consumers in order to have an impact in terms of sales? And the fifth thing is product substitutability. Brands that have less differentiation or in commodity-like products tend to require heavy advertising because they have to establish some unique feature, something differentiating between the other commodity-type products. So those are 5 common things that would affect the ad budget and how much needs to be spent. And this is just a quick little graphic showing how the product life cycle can be influential in the ad budget. So here, you might remember this from a previous marketing class. The introduction phase, right? You have to do a lot of informing, so the ad budget is usually high. This line here is the life cycle. This is not ad spending. This is the product life cycle, right? So maturity is right here, and then this is decline. This is rate of sales is what this line is, basically. Okay, so here I'm discussing how this relates to the ad budget. When the life cycle of a product is in a decline, usually there's almost no ad budget allocated for those products because it's pretty obvious that the product will either be deleted or harvested, and any incremental increase in ad budget is really not going to lead to have any effect on sales. There's products that have probably replaced it already, maybe technology that's obsolete. So usually these products don't get any resources for advertising. Just a couple examples from number 3 and 5, competition and clutter. Here's a lot of competition in the banking industry. A lot of clutter. People get a lot of messages from whatever banks are near them. And then product substitutability. The fast food market, there are so many different choices. That's why there's a lot of advertising in QSR, quick service restaurants. And here's a statistic for you from 2016. Fast food ads totaled $175 million allocated just for this industry. So that's a lot of money. So when deciding on the ad budget, you may also need to consider advertising elasticity of demand. So we had price elasticity of demand, and this is really the same concept. So what this shows is that as advertising expenditure increases, let's pretend this is 0 or I don't know, $5,000 at the base, and then as it increases, the incremental sales is going up at the same time. And this is your typical concave downward response curve, this one. All right, but at some point, this is going to level off. And over time, it may actually come back the other way. Right, so you have good jumps in sales in the beginning, right, at low levels. And then as advertising increases right about here, I should have numbers on here, you can see that the incremental sales become smaller and smaller. That's why this is curving. Right. Ad response in this sense is typically more elastic for new brands or new products or line extensions, meaning that the money invested has that larger impact on sales compared to existing brands. Sometimes, though, we see an effect like this one here. This we call the S-shaped response function. So again, ad expenditures are down here, where we see the biggest effect at this middle level. Right? Middle level of expenditure has a high effect. But again, once you get to the high levels, it flattens out. But on the other hand, early on, you don't want to stop advertising here because you haven't really generated any sales. So it's like you got to get over this hump here, experience the major shift in sales in this group. But once you realize that your sales incrementally have dropped off considerably, it may not, really be giving back as much. Sorry about that. So at the end, right, in both scenarios, probably going to have a leveling off and then potentially even a drop off. I wanted to show you this only because keeping us in that digital mindset, even though this isn't a digital marketing class, it isn't something you can let go of given our environment now, our marketing environment, and the social environment in which we live. And one trend that has been consistent in the last decade is the shift for marketers to spend money on mobile marketing or mobile digital advertising. A lot of marketers have reallocated their ad budget away from traditional mass media, print ads, television commercials, and so forth, and allocated those portions more heavily towards digital or mobile ad spending. And this chart depicts that from 2010 up through 2015. You can see that the total digital between desktop and mobile has shifted too. Okay, so it used to be all just like email advertising, website advertising is probably what's mostly in the desktop category, and even that now is shifting to mobile. Okay, so part of ad planning is developing the ad campaign. Some of you may have taken an advertising class where you may have spent several weeks on developing an ad campaign. For our purposes, we want to cover the base of it. The base of a good ad campaign is to focus on one or two core selling propositions. One mistake that novice marketers will make is to try to put everything about their product or service into an ad, all the features and benefits. And while there may be times to speak of those things in more inclusiveness, typically in mass media advertising, consumers don't have the attention span to pay attention to all of that. So you have to decide what is the one or two main things we want to get across that we want people to remember, that we think will affect consumer behavior or improve attitudes or whatever the actual goal is. So the advertiser should, or the marketer should know already through some type of research or understanding from their customer what type of appeal may work best with its target audience. And when I say which appeal, what I mean is, what is the way you should convey the message? Should it be funny? Should it be scary? Should it be heartfelt and emotional? Or should it be very straightforward? And knowing the target audience will help make that determination. So within this phase also, the marketer must elaborate on the brand positioning strategy and consider what is the key message, audience, and the main communications objectives. What are the key brand benefits to focus on? Ensure that the message will support the brand promise and determine what media are most likely to successfully carry that message to the consumer. I won't go through these one by one, but I would take a few minutes to think on your own, and you can review it in your book and on the ancillary slides you have. What are some of the reasons that a marketer may choose one form of media over another? You know, as millennials, as that demographic grows, the digital space is a very attractive and very cost-effective way to communicate. But these other traditional forms have not died completely. Some newspapers are really suffering. Television advertising still tends to be very effective, as is direct mail and radio when used properly. So they each have their advantages and their limitations, and really the right choice depends on the goals of the company and the brand. Where's the target audience? What do they pay attention to? Really, I can't think of any brand who wants to reach millennials being successful through newspaper advertising, because millennials simply don't read newspapers the way that baby boomers did, or some of them still do. Television is becoming a challenge because of how fragmented it is and all the streaming services. But television can still be a really great medium, particularly for live sports. People still watch sports live. So there's advantages and limitations to these, and these are just your major media types. And there's, by the way, there's no necessarily best choice here. Ideally, a marketer will be able to integrate the use of several of these and others at the same time in order to convey the message. That's the end of chapter 20.